Today we're traveling to the historic village of Lewisburg, one of the 5 lost villages in the Fort Drum Army installation in northern New York. Lewisburg is located on the Indian River in the town of Diana in Lewis County, New York. The earliest use of this site dates to 1825 when a sawmill was erected at the direction of the absentee land owner Joseph Bonaparte on the Indian River. Lewisburg was settled in 1831 by 4 Frenchmen to begin production of iron at this location. However, there was a sawmill built there in 1825 before they actually arrived on site. These brothers, Nicholas, Constant, and Charles Jomain, together with Louis Fennell, came to the area from Puerto Rico and built a cold blast furnace, which began operation in 1832. In 1836, the partnership sold the 5,000-acre parcel, which contained the furnace, to a New Jersey partnership made up of Isaac Lippincott, Joseph Morgan, and David Reamer. They introduced hot blast machinery and continued to operate the furnace, manufacturing pig iron and various castings, including stove parts. This partnership gradually dissolved, and the furnace was sold to James Sterling in 1852 for $10,000. Mr. Sterling then spent over $13,000 rebuilding the furnace in Lewisburg. Sterling formed a partnership with his brother Samuel and Hiram Poley and rebuilt this stack. They drained swamps, cleared land, and built roads. At that point, Irish laborers were brought in, and land was donated to build a Catholic church. At this time, the name of the village and post office were changed from Lewisburg to Sterlingbush. The furnace was quite productive, producing over 1,300 tons of iron ore in 1855. In 1858, St. John's Chapel was built in Lewisburg, the first church to be built in the town of Diana in Lewis County, New York. After James Sterling died, his son A.P. Sterling operated the furnace as a lessee of the estate. And in a 40-week blast in 1864, output reached its maximum at 2,820 tons of pig iron for the war effort. In 1869, Sterling sold the operation to Edwin Bulkey and the Jefferson County Iron Company. During the mid-19th century, the village was dominated by the furnace, although a sawmill was still in operation. The Jefferson County Iron Company concentrated on mining iron ore and gradually abandoned the furnace. The area briefly became a base for collecting bark used in tanning, and eventually the former name Lewisburg was regained. In 1872, Hamilton Child reported the church, post office, 1 hotel, and 2 stores, in addition to the furnace and a sawmill, were contained within the village. And employed in the village were a carpenter, 3 sawyers, a blacksmith, and a teamster. The Catholic Church closed in the late 1880s, and Methodists took over the building. It was in 1889 that St. Patrick's Catholic Church was built and continued to serve the community until August 1941. In 1925, the hotel at the crossroads in the town burned. Of the 5 lost villages on Fort Drum, 3, Sterlingville, Lewisburg, and Alpena, were centered on an ironworks industry. The ironworks furnaces and the scattered slag are slowly being reclaimed by the stronger-than-iron force of nature, as you can see from today's photos and video. But once, molten iron poured from these furnaces to make cannons that protected the Union, railroad lines that increased the size of the U.S., and provided blacksmiths with the material to make everyday items that were indispensable in creating the U.S. we know today. The workers of Sterling's ironworks were mostly immigrants of Irish and Polish nationalities, and in Lewisburg was mainly of Irish descent. At the conclusion of the Revolutionary War, Americans produced about 15% of the world's output of iron, which was made largely for domestic consumption. Iron processing in New York State dates to 1740, and was done by 4 different types of plants: coal blast furnace, anthracite-fueled furnaces, rolling mills, and Catalan forges of bloomeries. The relatively few charcoal blast furnaces in the state were mainly found in the Fort Drum vicinity. All the ironworks located on Fort Drum were charcoal-fueled and generally were cold blast furnaces, with very few exceptions. All were established prior to the Civil War, and all represented some form of iron processing that became largely obsolete in the second half of the 19th century. While the iron industry may have failed, the village did not, and it continued to flourish and thrive and have a strong community presence until Labor Day 1941, when village residents were removed through eminent domain to further the World War II effort and training of our military. It continues in that presence today and continues to train our men and women, our fighting forces, our 10th Mountain Division. History remains relevant today. The last sermon spoke in August 1941 at St. Patrick's Church in Lewisburg is the same sermon spoken at St. Rita's Church in DeFeriot, New York. I've included it here for you. hope you've enjoyed the tour of Lewisburg today. This is the view of the Indian River from where the water used to power the lime kiln.